all-time high? Too much anxiety, too much stress? Is your life overloaded? If it is, in this busy world, stay tuned because I have the answer to all the anxiety, all the worry, doubt, disbelief, overloaded life in this segment of A Scary to Remarry book review. What's up, Brave Hearts community? And so I told myself I was going to start reading a book a month. I need to get back into that because these past couple of years have been crazy and I haven't been reading as much as I should have been. But I'm back to committed to reading every month. And so the book that I just finished in January is a great book. And when I talk about relieving stress and anxiety, this book right here, Margin by Richard Swinson, is a game changer. You have to read this book. Now, Margin by Richard Swinson. Margin. I want to say this real quick though. The book starts off a little slow. Okay. It is 215 pages, and then it has all the footnotes and stuff in the back. And so it's a fairly easy read, and you can get through it within a month with 214, 215 pages. So I want to jump into this because there was a lot of things that I had highlighted in here, but I'm only going to highlight, I'm only going to talk about some of the things that I highlighted that I found foundational for if you have a overloaded, high anxiety life that I think will be beneficial to the reader. And so you can get your copy. You probably can get it on Amazon or wherever, but I'll have it linked in the description. Again, the book starts off a little slow, but let's jump into this. He talks about there's different kind of stress with distress and hyper stress, and he talks about that a little in the book. He says an excessive volume of stress is called hyper stress. The volume is important because how we deal with stress depends on how much of it we are confronted with. If the amounts are manageable, we can learn to avoid distress and possibly turn it into eustress. If, however, the amount are at hyper stress levels, then stress reduction is more important than stress management. If the stress reaction is resolved successfully, we do not notice any apparent damage. If, however, the result is failure or frustration, multiple pathologies may ensue. Tissue aging occurs at the cellular level. The immune system may malfunction, and cardiovascular catastrophes such as a stroke or heart attack may occur. And so he talks about these different stress levels in the book. He gives a breakdown on that as well. And of course, I'm just going to talk about some of the things I have highlighted that I thought was very engaging. He talks about emotional limits are even more vague. How much straining can the psyche withstand before being overloaded? Physically, most of us could carry a 100-pound person on our back, but we could not carry 10. We would not even try. What is clear to us in the context of physical limits is less clear regarding emotional limits. To extend the analogy of carrying people into the emotional context, you might be able to emotionally, quote unquote, carry one person. I thought that was good. But what about 5, 10, 100? Where should you draw the line? So it's one thing to carry a physical person, but he's saying how many people are we carrying emotionally and mentally? And so I thought that was good because we carry people that, we can't see it physically, but how many people are we actually carrying in our mind? And that can weigh us down as well. And so I thought that was really good. And then he talks about, there were some other things I had highlighted. He talks about, let's go into, there was a page that I had highlighted. Oh, he talks about these different practices. And so, in order to create margin in your life, He talks about expect the unexpected. A proverb in Ecuador says, everything takes longer than it does. This is not a perfect world, and the unexpected happens. To plan for the unexpected is not an invitation to sloppiness or mediocrity, but instead a concession to reality. If you want some breathing room, increase your margin of error. And so when he's talking about these different kind of margins, he's talking about from the perspective of physical, mental, spiritual, financial, emotional, and how he used this example of like hot tea. And you might have heard me talk about this in one of my previous podcast episodes where hot tea, if you fill it to the brim, if you fill it all the way to the top, the slightest thing that touches it, if that person is holding that cup, chances are that person to get burned because there's no margin of error. There's no margin. It's filled to the top. And he's saying that's how most of us are in our personal lives. We are filled to the top. So when you see people that's always frustrated, always mad, always on edge, it's because they haven't created margin. And that same cup of tea, if you didn't fill it up to the max and say you only filled it, say, 75% of the way, if you bump into that hot tea, chances are you might not get burned because there's a level of margin. And so he talks about that in the book, and he talks about learning to say no because a lot of times, we think we can take on the world. He says, turn off the television. And he talks about how a lot of times people can binge watch TV shows, and there's nothing against that. I get it. Your favorite show is on, but how much of that is really eating up your spare time? To where maybe you can be doing something more productive opposed to watching TV. And then he says, prune the activity branches. He talks about the fruit trees in our front yard grow new branches every year, every spring. Counterintuitively, if we want a healthy tree with better fruit, we need to prune away branches. In the same way, activities and commitments often have a way of adding themselves to our lives. Even though it is much harder to stop something than to start it, periodically get out the clippers and prune away. And so sometimes we can be activity activity junkies, especially if we have young kids. I get it, you want to put them in sports and different things, but at what cost? And so we have to be mindful of what activities that we pursue in. He talks about practice simplicity and contentment, and I thought this was really good. I want to read this on contentment. He says, we all consume significant quantities of time and the buying and then maintaining of things. A life of voluntary simplicity and contentment, on the other hand, is opposed to the unnecessary proliferation of material possessions. It is free of the clutter much of society must sort through on a daily basis. With fewer possessions, we do not have as many things to take care of. With a simpler wardrobe, our choice of what we wear each morning becomes less time consuming. With a smaller estate, there will be less debt bondage in our work schedule. He says, everything we own owns us. I thought that was good. We must maintain it, paint it, play with it, build space in our house to put it, and then work to pay it off. Perhaps if we have fewer things, we might have more time. Recognize unnecessary possessions for what they are, stealers of divine time. At the beginning of every day, we are given assignments that have eternal significance to serve, to love, to obey, to pray. Instead, we squander much of this time on things that soon will leave us forever. Powerful, powerful. And then he talks about short term flurry versus long term vision. Like, what are you just doing now opposed to having a long term vision? And I won't read into that because I want you to read the book as well because it's been a game changer in my personal life. He talks about decreased spending. Coming now to perhaps the more practical aspects of this topic, there are three ways to increase our financial margin: decrease spending, increase income, or increase savings. And so he talks about money a lot in here. And then there's a piece that was probably to me the best part of the book. He talks about the secret to contentment. And of course, this is a Christian based book. So I want to kind of talk about that. He says, contentment is not only a good idea, it is our duty. If God recommends something, we ought to do it. If God requires something, we must do it. As J.I. Packer has emphasized, contentment is both commended, godliness with contentment is great gain, and commanded, be content with what you have. Such a forceful endorsement by the Almighty should make contentment a prominent concern for each of us. Instead, we make it a secret concealed by our indifference. When the Apostle Paul wrote, I have learned the secret of being content, his use of the word secret was intentional. Those things we expect to bring contentment surprisingly do not. We cannot depend on it to fall into place through the progressive evolving of civilization, for contentment arises from a different source. Most of us do not know how to uncover this secret and have never seriously tried. Our quest is usually not for contentment, but for more. This quest brings us into an immense maze where before us lies dozens of avenues. Some are wide, luxurious, and tempting, and we see a rush of our friends entering them. They lead to beautiful houses, comfortable cars, exotic vacations, and affluence. Other avenues, equally popular, lead to prestigious colleges, distinguished jobs, important friends, and power. Still, others direct us to beautiful spouses, beautiful children, deep tans, and popularity. All the while, off to one side courses a narrow uphill road, unadorned and unpopular. It is dusty from sparse use and lonely from lack of travelers. The sole treasure at its end is an elusive commodity called godliness with contentment. Godliness is an attitude whereby we want to please God. Contentment, explains J.I. Packer, is essentially a matter of accepting God's hand. What He sends us, we know that He is good and therefore it is good. Contentment is the freedom that comes with prosperity or poverty do not matter, to accept what we have and want to build little, as Thoreau advised. The more we choose contentment, the more God sets us free. The more He sets us free, the more we choose contentment. I thought that was good. That was probably one of the best parts of the book. He says, the restlessness power of discontent. He says, we keep chasing and he keeps dodging. Give a man everything he wants, declared Emmanuel Kant. And at that moment, everything will not be everything. So, regardless of what we feel like even if we have everything, will quote unquote everything be enough? And that's the question we have to ask ourselves. And so, at what point will we learn to be content? As Paul says, the secret is the secret that I've learned. The secret is the contentment. And a lot of times, well, you know what? I'm gonna see if I can find that piece because he talks about some of. I want to talk about something real quick. He says the prosperity ladder. This is another good point. Another erroneous measure of contentment is the prosperity ladder. Most of us look up the ladder and notice that the wealthy have more than we do. This, of course, strikes a near fatal blow at one's contentment. If instead we reversed our gaze and looked down the ladder, our gratitude would thrive and opportunities for sharing would abound. And so a lot of times we usually on the ladder up to success, but rarely do we look down to maybe see some of those who might not have more than us. And we have to learn to be grateful with what we have, opposed to a lot of times wanting more. And so let's talk about as the book end, of course, and I don't want to give away too much. I want to. He talks about no sooner have we started out the gate, then we encounter our first problem: society's disrespect. If we choose to ignore fashion and status, we will not gain the admiration of our peers. From the outset, we need to decide who it is we are trying to please and why. And I thought that was good because he's talking about from a societal perspective that society finds that disrespectful as far as being content, because a lot of times, we're worried about what our neighbors have, what we see on Instagram. Social media is a whole different monster. And so it's like it teaches us that we're never content. And society would almost look down on you for being content. And so, are you willing to please God, or do you want to adhere to society standards and this rat race and keeping up with the Joneses? I heard one quote that says even the Joneses trying to keep up with the Joneses. So a lot of times I think we have to ask ourselves, am I doing this for people that might not even like me or don't even care? A lot of people just don't care. They're running their own rat race. They're really not, caught up in what you're trying to do. And so um, there's another couple of quotes that he says. God, however, has commanded us to rest. A biblically authentic and balanced life will include time to be still, to remember, to meditate, to delight in who He is and what He has made. But a large obstacle stands in our way. There is no glory in rest, no social acclaim. We are never a hero because we rest. I thought that was good. And a lot of times, rest is almost like frowned upon because it's like, oh, I got to get it. And I hope we're kind of doing away with hustle culture where it's like you're trying to stay up 24 hours a day to, beat somebody else to the punch. Like that can drive someone crazy. I know it would drive me crazy. And I started out like that, but I've learned over the years, like I can be more productive if I rest. If I spend more time resting, that way it sounds counterproductive, but it allows you to kind of reframe and to start over and to think like, oh, I have these thoughts and ideas that came to my head. Now I can write them down. Now I can actually do them because I'm not so tired, right? And so I thought that was good where he talks about we are never a hero because we rest. And yes, rest is important. Then he says, a restless work style produces a restless person. Notes Gordon McDonald. We do not rest because our work is done. We rest because God commanded it and created us to have a need for it. Thought that was good. And so those were some of the things that I had highlighted in this book that I thought was really, really well. I mean, the book is, like I say, 200 something pages, Margin by Richard Swenson. Um, I suggest that you get it if you feel like you are caught in the rat race, if you feel like you cannot get ahead in life, or you just burnt out and you just need a break. And there's nothing wrong with rest. As I get older, I'll be 49 next week, and I'm learning the importance of rest and just to relax and to know that God is in control. Because a lot of times, look, I tell people this, and I'm going to end. I tell people that God can do more with you sleep than you can do awake. I'll say that one more time. God can do more with your life when you're asleep than you can do awake. So it's just best to rest in Him and to know that He's in control. And for some odd reason, we think we control everything when He's in control. I don't know if you ever felt like you were out of control, but it's like when you feel out of control, you have to realize, like, oh, I'm really not the star of this show, and that this world is bigger than me. And so, hopefully, this little quick breakdown on some of the notes on margin. I pray that you will create some margin in your personal life. It is so important. And so, those, especially if you're younger than me, make sure that you create some margin for yourself in your personal life, whether physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, spiritually. I think I said spiritually. But I'll have it linked in the description. Thank you all for rocking with me. I appreciate it. Go get your copy of Margin, and whatever you had highlighted, I would like to hear from you. Leave a comment below, and make sure that you check out the next video because I believe that's going to help you in this process. So thanks again for rocking with me.